We're still aware of it, but it's nowhere near like an 83 dB. We have to be actually out there to be aware of that 80 dB. So wherever you are, you can have this hi-fi experience, perhaps by listening. But sound is used as this as a signifier for what Schaefer and others think of as basically a malaise in modern society. Sound is this really stressful, tiring imposition upon us. We can close our eyes, but we can't close our ears, and there's no escape from it. And it's causing us to become universally deaf. I like to think of the soundscape in another way. I like to describe it as a sort of encounters between the improvised and the spontaneous, and the predictable and regular. And I like to see those things happening at almost any kind of time zone you like. If you look at the internal combustion engine, for example, you zoom right in on the engine. You've got the predictable and regular. It has to be predictable and regular for it to work. But then you have a driver who's able to spontaneously put his accelerator down, put the brakes on, slowly stop. Then you zoom out and you look at a kind of whole overview of the city and the swarms of traffic moving in and out. They're all improvising. But if you look at it over 10 days, you see that at 8 o'clock the roads are very busy and it's regular, and you see these patterns. So there's this constant kind of play between the spontaneous and the unpredictable and this predictable. And they're interacting with one another simultaneously. And therefore it's complicated and it's rich and it's exciting to my ears. And that could be in the countryside or in is something that excites me about the landscape. The variations within it. Completely different types of sort of noise, all recorded within about 10-meter radius of one another in a train station in Turin. Go down there, you stick your microphone in front of these things and draw attention to them. And once you've captured them, you've got this variation. Your attention's being drawn to the richness of all of this. Of the sound that's around us, and I really like to play with that and talk about it a bit more if there's time. But it's observing these variations can be quite thrilling. Lots of musicians work with soundscape. Here's an example. Estonian composer called Rauno Renne, and a piece of music called Railway to London. And he's down in London, goes to the train station, records these sounds, and you hear this very beautiful pitch contour in the announcer's voice. And of course, by composing some chords that fit underneath it, really draws attention to this very musical lilt that from something that perhaps when you're there is quite mundane. Pulling it back and turning it into something else. It's quite exciting. Here's another, you can't read that at all, can you? You've got a hope. There's a writer called Jean-François Augiard, and he wrote this dictionary with Henri Torg, Dictionary of Sound Effects, and was translated about 5 years ago into English. And this book is very useful for architects because landscape designers and so on, because it describes audio phenomena. It's a description of reverberation, but it's not a description of reverberation in the kind of acoustics. Using acoustics terms, it's using terms that might be more helpful. People trying to engage with what reverberation might mean creatively if you're trying to design a building or design a space. This concept, sharowaji, is one it comes up towards the end of the dictionary because it starts with S. So it's, to go quite a way before you get it. Sharowaji, has anyone heard of this before? It's an effect, something that you encounter in life. Well, I'll read out the description. The sharowaji effect is an aesthetic effect that characterizes a sensation of plenitude, sometimes created by the contemplation of a complex soundscape whose beauty is unexplainable. This exotic term, which travellers introduced to Europe in the 17th century from their journeys to China, designates the beauty that comes about without perceiving the order or economy of the object in question. The effect comes about as a surprise and will carry you elsewhere, beyond strict representation, out of context. In this brutal confusion, the senses get lost. A beautiful sharowaji plays with the rules of composition, manipulates them, and awakens a feeling of pleasure through perceptual confusion. Whether in a dreamlike or anxious state, we are sometimes completely deaf to the environment. However, while on a walk or on a journey, our spirit can combine availability, attention, perspicacity, and therefore become receptive to new things, including sonic fantasy. So, particularly while you're walking around, you're on a kind of you're susceptible to encountering something special. Your mind has detached itself from other concerns. You might be having a kind of reverie or something as you walk along, and it's in these kinds of circumstances that this effect might suddenly present itself to you. It's not something that you can look for. It's something that finds you. It firms itself in contrast with the banality from which it originates. Sharowaji sounds as such belong to everyday life or to no musical registers. They only become sharowaji by decontextualization, by a rupture of the senses. The sonic matter that encourages the sharowaji effect is up to the appreciation of each individual in a given context. However, the soundscape, and in particular urban soundscapes, can, as a result of their unpredictability and diversity, favour it. The sonic wealth of nature is also susceptible to the creating of the sharowaji effect, but particularly in cities, there's the chance, quite often, because of all these different sound objects that are floating around the space, that they may collide in some particular way that draws attention to the collision of the two things. I think I found one, again, at this train station in Turin. in this Turin's train station, there's a very particular violence going on in the soundscape. The council in Turin allowed an advertising company to put TV monitors all the way down the platform and to play adverts on them. Adverts with sound. So you get air conditioner, cars, insurance, standing there waiting for your train. You pay for your ticket, and yet there's this advertising with sound that's just constantly at you. It's a very aggressive use of the soundscape. It's definitely a violent act. However, one of the adverts, this little tune, and what they're allowed to do is cut the advert sound to make a train announcement. And just at the point, is the train announcer. So these two things colliding completely spontaneously out of the blue, but the train announcement ended the phrase, the musical phrase that was playing. So, yeah, but the train announcer comes in and cuts it off with that. And I thought that might be a shower-edgy moment, but of course, having drawn your attention to it and made it a highlight of something special in a lecture, it's no longer that in something else. But these things can happen to you at any moment, but they have to be spontaneous. They have to be come out of the blue. That you can't anticipate them, expect them to happen, but they also won't happen unless you're available to it happening by perhaps being on some long walk or having somebody tell you what shower-edge is. As we move towards digital soundscapes, I suppose one aspect of all of this is the electronic soundscape, particularly. Anybody know what I'm playing right now? Heard it before? So Brian Eno's music for airports, which is this, tied in with this concept, this notion of ambience. A kind of music that changes very little, that you can make it the focus of your attention or pull away from it. A lot of the music up to this point, a lot of music written by almost every composer, so it's all part of it actually. It has a kind of narrative structure to it, an agenda, a flow, a place that it's going. Music that's a story somehow, through its harmonic structure, through the way that instruments may be used to play against one another. The feeling that at some point this music's going to end, there's going to be a cadence, there's going to be a full stop, a big crash